Sagittarius. Karma strikes without mercy. This is how it ends for the one who played with your heart. Sagittarius. Some storms are not loud. Some justice arrives in silence. And some answers from the universe do not come through words, but through the steady shifting of your soul. If you've been sensing something change in the air, if the pain you once carried has started to soften without explanation, it is not random. You are walking through one of the most sacred phases in a soul's journey. The moment when karmic balance is restored without your needing to ask for it. You once loved someone with everything inside you. Your honesty, your fire, your belief that love should be freeing, not binding. But they mistook that love. They played with something sacred. And even though you walked away without drama, even though you chose peace over revenge, the universe has not forgotten what you gave. This message is not about pain. It's about closure. It's about confirmation. It's about the quiet justice that finds its way to those who stayed true to their hearts when others treated love like a game. Sagittarius, if you've ever asked, will they ever understand what they did to me? This is your answer. And it's not a message of vengeance. It's a message of freedom. What's coming next will not hurt. It will heal. But only if you're ready to release the burden you were never meant to carry. If your soul is listening, if your breath just caught for a moment, stay with me. Because what you're about to hear was written in light just for you. Gate 1, the flame they tried to diminish, and the karma that was already set in motion. Sagittarius, your love is not ordinary. It carries the wild, generous spirit of your soul. When you love, you leap. You give. You believe. You let your guard down. Not because you're naive, but because something inside you trusts that truth will protect you. That sincerity will be met with sincerity. That if you show up fully, the other will too. But what happens when that trust is broken? What happens when someone sees the fire in your soul and chooses not to warm themselves by it, but to play with it, to test how close they can get without burning? They saw your light. They saw your strength. But instead of honoring it, they mistook it for something to control. They believed that your patience meant permission, that your silence meant you were unaware, that your heart was a playground where they could come and go as they pleased. But here is what they never understood. Sagittarius sees everything. You may not speak it. You may not confront it right away. But your soul registers every slight, every half-truth, every moment someone makes you question your own worth. And while you waited, hoping they would return with clarity, with honesty, with the courage to meet you where you are, the universe began writing its own script. You did not ask for karma. You did not wish them harm, because that's not who you are. You don't destroy. You evolve. You don't seek revenge. You seek freedom. But the universe doesn't need your permission to restore what's been broken. It only needs your truth. Sagittarius, the karma that is returning now was never born from your rage. It was born from your restraint. It was born the moment you swallowed your pain to keep the peace. The moment you forgave without apology. The moment you stayed a little longer, hoping they'd finally understand what they had in front of them. You did not fall because you were foolish. You fell because you believed. And that belief, so rare, so radiant, is the very energy that the universe is now repaying. They thought you'd always be there. They mistook your loyalty for dependence. They assumed your grace meant weakness. And so they played. They disappeared when it suited them. They returned when it benefited them. They touched the most tender parts of you, then left you to bleed alone. And even as you broke inside, you never became bitter. You stayed open. You cried, yes, but your tears were prayers. You hurt, but you still hoped. You didn't retaliate. You reflected. You searched your soul to see what you could have done differently, never realizing that it wasn't your light that was the problem, but their inability to receive it. And so karma moved, quietly, unseen, like wind threading through leaves, rearranging everything. And now it's returning, not to punish them but to free you, to show you that justice in the hands of the divine is not loud. It's surgical. It removes what no longer serves. It reveals what was hidden. It empties what was full of falsehood so truth can return. You may not see it happen. You don't need to. You may never hear them admit it. They may never apologize, never show remorse. But you will feel it. In the way your heart no longer longs for answers. In the way your mind stops looping around their memory. In the way peace begins to root itself where chaos used to reign. That is karma. Not just in their life but in yours. The restoration of your inner world. The return of your power. Because here is the truth, Sagittarius. You never truly lost anything. You loved. You gave. You risked. That is not loss. That is courage. They lost. They lost the chance to know you in your fullness. They lost the version of you that would have walked beside them into the storm. They lost the one person who would have believed in them long after the world gave up. They lost something rare. And they may not know it now, but they will. The doors that are closing in their life are not random. The connections that are slipping away. The opportunities that don't seem to stick. The joy that turns hollow even in success. These are not punishments. They are echoes. Echoes of what they once took for granted. Echoes of the warmth they mistook as ordinary. Echoes of your absence. But don't wait for them to understand. Don't waste your radiance trying to prove you were worth it. You were. You are. The universe has already witnessed everything. Every moment you held yourself upright when your soul wanted to collapse. Every time you smiled with a heart full of splinters. Every second you kept believing in love, even as love failed to show up for you. And now it's your time. Your time to stop carrying the weight of the unspoken. Your time to stop rewriting your past to make room for someone who never showed up for you. Your time to remember who you were before they made you question your light. Your karma is not their punishment. Your karma is your healing, your peace, your freedom, and it has already begun. You may start to notice things. A moment of laughter that feels real. A night of sleep without dreaming of them. A breath that doesn't carry weight. These are not small. They are sacred. They are the soul's way of saying, I'm coming home. Sagittarius, you are not who you were when they met you. You've walked through fire. And you didn't turn to ash. You turned to gold. You don't need their apology. You don't need them to say, I see it now. Because the universe already has. And it has prepared something for you. Something you don't have to earn, fight for, or chase. Something you only need to receive. You have stepped out of their story and into your own. Let that be the final chapter. Let the flame they tried to diminish become the torch that lights your new path. And if your heart hears this and feels a strange, gentle release, know this. The karma is not just arriving. It's already here. Gate 2, the signs are speaking. And the universe has already begun to shift for you. Sagittarius, have you felt it lately? A strange stillness brushing your chest in the middle of the night, like a soft breeze passing through your ribs. A subtle shift in the way your body reacts when their name comes to mind. The dreams that used to haunt you now return differently, quieter. Sometimes with their image but hollow, blurred. No longer tethered to longing. These are not coincidences. These are signs. Not from your mind but from the universe. The great cosmic balance is moving. And you are being lifted. When karma begins to turn, it doesn't always shout. It doesn't throw lightning or deliver dramatic reckonings. It begins like a whisper. The kind you can't hear with your ears but feel in your bones. A growing discomfort in the soul of the one who once betrayed you. A sudden distance they can't explain. Their joy doesn't feel the same. Their victories feel short-lived. They laugh, but the sound rings hollow even to themselves. You may not witness this, but your soul will know. Because the shift starts there, in the unseen. You might wake in the early hours with a sudden clarity, or experience odd timing, thinking of them just as a feather floats down in your path. Hearing a song from that season of heartbreak just as you're laughing for the first time in weeks. Or glancing at the clock and noticing the same numbers again and again, 11:11, 3:33, 12:12. As if the universe is winking, reminding you, we're here. Keep going. There may be moments when your breath deepens without effort, when your body feels strangely light, when you realize you didn't think of them for an entire day. That Sagittarius is not forgetting. That is the healing finally taking root. That is your soul untangling itself from an old loop. But while you rise, something else begins to fall. Not in a vengeful way, but in an unshakable, inescapable rhythm. The one who hurt you, whether they knew the damage they caused or not, is beginning to feel the recoil. Not through punishment but through pattern. Because the same behavior that hurt you hasn't changed. And now there's no one left to absorb the impact for them. You once stood between them and the consequences of their own choices. You softened the blows. You rationalized their actions. You stayed when you should have walked. And in doing so, you became a spiritual buffer. But not anymore. You've stepped out of the cycle. You've reclaimed your energy. And now the energy they once offloaded onto you returns to sender. You might never know the details. The missed opportunity that quietly broke them. The love they couldn't keep. The deal that slipped through their fingers. The restlessness that haunts them in silence. But you'll feel it, in the way your soul no longer carries their weight. That's how you know. Karma has remembered your name. It's important to understand this, Sagittarius. You didn't summon karma. You didn't wish it upon them. You simply released the role you never should have had. You stopped bending. You stopped explaining your worth. You stopped waiting for the apology that was never coming. And in that release, the universe began to act. The signs are everywhere now. You see more clearly. You're not triggered the way you once were. You find yourself smiling at things that used to sting. You cross paths with someone new and don't compare them to the past. You catch yourself dreaming of the future without fear. These are not small moments. These are milestones. You once begged the universe for closure. You cried out for a reason, a sign, an acknowledgement. And now, in the quietest ways, it is being delivered. Not as an answer from them, but as a rising within you. You're no longer asking, why did they do it? You're beginning to ask, why did I stay? What was I afraid of losing? And then comes the realization. Nothing they could have given you compares to the peace you feel now. Peace is the proof. And Sagittarius, you are proof that even those who burn can learn how to carry light. I want to tell you this truth gently. The person who once hurt you may continue on with their life, but they are no longer escaping the impact of what they did. Not because you cursed them, but because the sacred cannot be desecrated without consequence. You were sacred. Your love was sacred. The way you showed up, flawed but full of fire, full of faith, was sacred. And the universe always protects what is sacred. You may find yourself visited by symbols now. A bird that pauses near your window and stares. A breeze that wraps around you in a moment of sorrow. A flash of light at the corner of your vision when no one else is near. Don't ignore these. These are not tricks of the mind. These are affirmations. They are the way your higher self, your guides, and yes, perhaps even your ancestors are letting you know. You did the right thing. You held your light. You walked away with grace. Sagittarius, this is not just healing. This is rebirth. It may not feel explosive, but it is revolutionary. You are shedding the version of you that needed closure. You are releasing the one who hoped they'd come back and finally see you. Because now, you see yourself. You no longer need to be chosen. You've chosen you. And as you rise, their shadow remains behind. Not because you pushed them there, but because they refused to grow. And you've outgrown the cage they once kept you in. If your soul is nodding quietly right now, if something inside you feels like exhaling after years of holding your breath, trust that. The signs are speaking. And what they are saying is this: you are free. You are rising. And the story they tried to trap you in no longer belongs to you. Gate 3. The soul cord has snapped. And you're finally free from the bond that silently held you. There is a kind of goodbye that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. No door slams. No final text. No tearful confrontation. It happens silently inside your soul. When the weight of carrying someone who no longer belongs to your spirit becomes heavier than the fear of letting go. That moment has arrived for you, Sagittarius. You may not have realized it yet. You may still wake up thinking of them sometimes. You may still feel the flicker of their presence in your dreams. You may even hear their name and feel a quickening in your chest. But that is not longing. That is the final echo of a thread that has just been severed. Because the truth is this: you were connected. You weren't imagining it. The bond was real. A soul cord, woven through memories, emotion, karmic lessons, and moments that left an imprint too deep for logic to explain. It formed not through words but through energy. Through the love you gave freely. Through the dreams you once built in your mind with them. Through the tears you shed in silence, believing somehow that suffering was proof of love. But that bond wasn't meant to last forever. It was meant to wake you, to teach you, to remind you of your own sacred depth. And when a lesson is learned, the cord begins to loosen. And when a soul is ready to return to its own path, the cord snaps. And now, Sagittarius, that moment is here. You may not feel it like a bang. You may not be able to name the hour or the day. But you'll know. You'll know because the part of you that once needed them to understand doesn't anymore. The part of you that once replayed every conversation has gone quiet. The part of you that once burned for closure has cooled into peace. This is the freedom you've waited for. Not the kind that comes from rebellion or severing ties in anger, but the freedom that arrives when your soul turns its face back to the sun after too long in shadow. And here's what you need to know. You did not fail. You did not hold on for too long. You loved as deeply as your heart allowed. You tried. You stayed. You endured. Not because you were weak, but because you believed in love that transforms. And that belief was beautiful, even if they weren't ready to receive it. But you're ready now to receive something else. Your soul has stopped waiting. That is why the dreams are different now. Why your energy feels lighter. Why the memories no longer cut. The thread has been cut not by force, but by truth. You no longer resonate with them. Not because you hate them, but because you've grown. Because your vibration has risen. Because what you once needed from them, you've learned to give yourself. You no longer belong to that bond. You no longer orbit a version of love that asked you to abandon yourself to feel seen. And if there's a voice in your head whispering, "But I still feel connected," know this: what you feel now is not the bond, it's the habit. It's the muscle memory of love that stayed too long. And that fades too. Moment by moment, breath by breath, as you return home to yourself. Let me share something with you. A story I've heard many times in different ways. A Sagittarius woman once told me, "I thought I'd never stop dreaming about him. Every time I tried to move on, I'd feel him in my dreams calling me back." I asked her, "What happened when you stopped answering?" She paused. Then she said, "That's when the dreams stopped. That's when I realized the dreams weren't from love. They were from the part of me that hadn't let go." And that's the moment her healing became permanent. Sagittarius, you are in that moment now. The thread is gone, and in its place is clarity. You may not get the apology. They may never realize what they lost. They may keep running their patterns with someone else. But you are no longer carrying their karma. You are no longer holding space for someone who didn't know how to honor the sacred ground of your heart. And here's the miracle of it all. When that soul cord breaks, something else emerges. Your energy comes back. Your intuition sharpens. The parts of yourself you once gave away return with gifts in hand. You begin to remember what you loved before them. You begin to imagine a future not haunted by the past. You begin to speak more softly to yourself. You begin to glow, not with the fire of pain, but with the peace of presence. The universe is now filling the space that they once occupied. Not with distraction, but with truth. Not with another person, but with something far more powerful. You will wake one morning and realize you didn't think of them. That your stomach didn't twist when you saw their name. That you didn't check their page. That you didn't hope they'd reach out. And when you notice that, you'll smile. Not in triumph, but in liberation. Because now you see it clearly. They were never your home. They were the passage that taught you how to build your own. And so, if tonight you dream again and they do appear, but your heart doesn't ache, your chest doesn't tighten, your soul doesn't stir, know that this is the sign. You've been released. You no longer carry them. You no longer carry the version of yourself that needed them. And you never have to return. This is how freedom feels. Gate 4. You are no longer a lesson. You are now a miracle in motion. Sagittarius, there comes a moment when the universe no longer asks you to learn through pain. When the lessons quiet. When the storms part. When the silence you used to fear becomes the sanctuary you never knew you needed. That moment is here. And you, dear soul, are no longer being shaped by sorrow. You are being crowned by clarity. You didn't rush this healing. You didn't skip steps. You didn't pretend it didn't hurt. You went through the fire. You walked barefoot through nights that felt endless. You questioned your worth. You cried for answers. You tried to understand how someone could look into the heart of a Sagittarius, fierce, loyal, full of sacred truth, and still choose to wound it. But you did not stay there. You moved. You softened without breaking. You stayed open without staying stuck. And now something is shifting. Not outside of you. Within. There is no more room for the old story. It doesn't fit anymore. You've outgrown the version of yourself who begged for love. You've stepped out of the maze of what ifs. You've stopped trying to decode their behavior. You've stopped apologizing for the size of your soul. You are no longer a lesson for someone else's growth. You are a miracle in motion. And miracles do not explain themselves. You are beginning to feel it in small ways. The way joy creeps back into your laughter. The way you wake up and look forward instead of backwards. The way the world feels more colorful, more vibrant. Like it's welcoming you into a life you finally feel ready to live. That's not a phase. That's alignment. That's the reward for walking through your awakening without losing yourself. You used to wonder if they would ever regret what they did, if they'd ever feel what you felt. But now that question holds no power. Because whether or not they do, you are no longer attached to the outcome. You no longer need closure. You are closure. You are the period at the end of a sentence you never needed to finish reading. And that punctuation, it's the full stop between their chaos and your peace. Let me tell you something the universe has been waiting to show you. Love is coming, but not the kind that knocks you over. Not the kind that demands your healing. Not the kind that makes you earn your worth all over again. No, this love is gentle, steady, a mirror, not a rescue, a space, not a test, a heart that beats at the same rhythm as yours, not to complete you, but to walk beside you as you continue evolving. This love is not the reward for being hurt. It is the resonance of the soul you've become because you refuse to stay bitter. You will recognize it not by its fireworks, but by its ease. By the way you don't have to explain your silence. By the way your laughter flows freely. By the way your body stops bracing for abandonment. This love doesn't ask, "What happened to you?" It says, "I see who you are now, and I honor the road that brought you here." And not just love in relationship, but love in purpose. Love in waking up and knowing what you're meant to create. Love in the way your presence begins to inspire others. Love in the simple act of trusting your intuition again. Sagittarius, you are no longer chasing healing. You are living in it. And because of that, the karma you once carried has transformed. You no longer need to witness their downfall. You don't need to watch their world unravel. Because justice for you has never looked like punishment, it looks like peace. Feels like a quiet morning where you stretch and realize you no longer ache. It feels like walking down a street that once triggered you and smiling at how far you've come. It feels like listening to your favorite song and feeling joy instead of longing. This is what the end of karmic cycles looks like, not vengeance but liberation. And in that liberation you start to see things as they truly are. You look back not with rage but with wisdom. You see your past not as a prison but as a path. You no longer want them to suffer. You just want them to grow because that's what you've done. That's what you are still doing. So breathe now, deep and easy. Let this moment wash over you. Let the light that surrounds you become the light that shines from within. You are no longer carrying the weight of unspoken hurt. You are no longer defined by the story someone else wrote in your name. You are the author now. And the next chapter begins with clarity. It unfolds with joy. It dances with purpose. You are not just healed. You are whole. You are not just letting go. You are being reborn. Sagittarius, if you feel something stirring within you, a soft buzzing in your chest, a warmth behind your eyes, a trembling in your hands, that is not nervousness. That is arrival. That is your spirit saying, "We made it." You've crossed the threshold. You are no longer someone else's lesson. You are your own miracle. Conclusion, you don't belong to the past anymore. You belong to the light. Sagittarius, if you've come this far, take a breath. Not because you're finished, but because something sacred has just begun. You have walked through fire, not to be burned, but to emerge as gold. You carried a bond that wasn't yours to hold. You stayed in stories that made you shrink. You believed in love even when it didn't believe in you. And still you chose to heal. Not with vengeance, but with grace. This is not the end of your story. It's the moment you stop looking backward for meaning. The moment you stop asking, "Why did they do it?" and begin asking, "What is my soul ready to become now?" You are not what they couldn't see. You are what you chose to become after they left. You're no longer orbiting someone else's shadow. You're standing in your own sun. The person you used to wait for, the one who'd finally love you right, the one who'd understand your worth, was always you. And now you've remembered. So leave this message not with sorrow but with power. A quiet kind of power. The kind that says, "I no longer need closure. I am the closure." I no longer need revenge. I am the restoration. I no longer carry their karma. I carry my light. If this message resonated with your soul, leave a small prayer or symbol below, a way of saying, I am free. Share this with someone whose heart is still remembering how to let go. And subscribe to Zodiac Wisdom, so this light continues to walk beside you. This is not goodbye. This is your beginning.